It's good to see all of you, and thanks for being willing to be here. So I have some notes because I want to make sure that I don't forget to say something that's important. And after speaking for a little while, then I will ask Eric and Andy and Derek to come up to the stage so we can take your questions. So I will not filibuster, but I owe you a conversation. And so that's how we will start the meeting. Thanks for receiving Eric's message in the spirit it's intended, which is actually to rebuild accountability and trust. That starts with me. I made a mistake, and I let you down, and I let down this institution, and I am sorry for that. Period, full stop. And what I want to do, without making excuses for anything, is explain to you the purpose of and the process by which we posted the video. You can ask whatever question you want. Every question is in bounds. Every critique is in bounds. You are a cheerful lot, obviously not right now, understandably, and I trust you for us to have a good conversation. And I'm grateful, and I don't take for granted, that you're still willing to be here today and to have that conversation with me. The other thing I will say is I know that the last 6 days have been tumultuous for you professionally, for you personally. Many, maybe most of you, wondering what the repercussions of all of this will be on you and your career, and even for you personally. And I understand that. I definitely understand that. And if you want to talk about that more, you want to ask more questions about that, all of that is in bounds too. And we'll stay here as long as we need to. So let me start with me. But let me remind you that those of you who made the decision when our former chief of staff, who is a good man, but who made a mistake, he did something wrong when he retweeted a former Heritage colleague's post. If I were in your shoes, I would have taken that the same way those of you who reposted that post did, which is that it's wrong and that you were going to speak up. And I'm proud of you for doing that. I'm not selling out our former chief of staff, who will be a friend. He is a good man, and I'll defend him on his virtue. He made a mistake too. But for those of you who believe, maybe in part because of the nature of the news cycle, that there's going to be some sort of retribution on you, that's not how we operate here. And I think if you can see through the last 6 days and remember how I operate, you know that's not how I operate. We might have differences of opinion on things, but retribution is not what we do. So let me get to the video. The purpose of it was, and this is an explanation. This is not excuses. This is an explanation. The purpose of the video, ironically, and I now know in hindsight this will sound dumb, and it was well-intentioned, which is we had a lot of dynamics, vectors coming into Heritage, some of which only a few of us were seeing, and some of which only I was seeing. And those dynamics, they weren't all attacks, were you must publicly disavow Tucker Carlson. The reason that was relevant was because we had just concluded a paid media partnership with Tucker in the summer. And that's the kind of thing we do with a lot of media figures. In fact, it's ironic that, but important to remember, we simultaneously had a paid media partnership with Tucker and with our other friend, Mark Levin, right when they were going at it. And Heritage might be one of the few institutions on the political right that can do that. That's one dynamic. Related to that dynamic was chatter online. I would be the first person to tell you that online chatter and X are not real life. But in Washington, D.C., they become real life. And I would love, as we do our part to revitalize the good life, to remember that. Not criticizing any of you in any passive-aggressive way, which I think you know I'm not, about anything you've said online. I'm just saying that's what was coming in. And there was pressure from some high-profile people for me to make a statement that Tucker Carlson's no longer part of the conservative movement. And then another dynamic was the deep concern I have, yes, as the president of Heritage, but primarily as a dad of 4, about how appealing, lamentably, the noxious concepts of anti-Semitism, Stalinism, grotesque comments, truly grotesque comments about women, which is also a grotesque way of understanding manhood, that are cached, not just on the left, but on the right. I didn't know much about this Fuentes guy. I still don't, which underscores the mistake. I can tell you with a clear conscience and not making any excuses that those were my intentions, to fix all of that. And obviously I didn't. I made them worse. The process by which we arrived at the video was also short-circuited. It was a violation of our one voice policy. It is part of our one voice policy that we don't cancel friends, but I'm not going to sort of shroud all of this in a dogmatic stance against cancellation culture. That's not what I mean by making that point. I'm simply saying that the process was rushed. It involved too few people. Our former chief of staff had the pen. I'm the one who recorded the video. The buck stops on the desk in my office in the 8th floor. So whatever accountability comes from this, I get, and I deserve. I'll come back to that in a minute. But when the script was presented to me, I understood from our former colleague that it was approved. It was signed off on by the handful of colleagues who were part of that. Still my fault. I should have had the wisdom to say, time out, let's go double check this. I do that often, and usually the office I walk to is Derek's, and I should have done that. So that's my fault. I sat and recorded the video. So, the substance of the video, some of the substance, maybe most of the substance of the video, the substantive points, are things that I think we believe. But there are a couple of pain points that I want to address specifically. If there are others you want to raise, you're more than welcome to. But these are the ones that I've been homing in on in the last few days as I've talked to our board, which has been wonderful and supportive through this process, of us as an institution, and donors and members of Congress and others, a lot of others. Number one, the term venomous coalition. A terrible choice of words, especially for our Jewish colleagues and friends who understand that, given history, to be a trope used against them. And I very sincerely, very, very sincerely apologize to you in particular and to all of you for using that. It was not my intention to use a trope. I should have been better, so I hope you understand that. But I have to be better at being aware of those things. My closest Jewish friend in the world, Yoram Hazony, has flown to DC this week in part to help me with this, personally and professionally. He does not have to do that. And he may decide after we meet later today, you know, Roberts, you're not worth it. And I told him last night I would understand. But he said, I know Heritage, I know you, I actually know what you were trying to accomplish, although it was really ham-handed, and I want to help you. So know that I'm not merely talking to the people who like the claim about no cancellation and so on. I'm talking to people who are real critics of this. The question, secondly, about no cancellation. Is there a limiting principle to that? I should have said that there was, especially in light of Tucker hosting not just Fuentes, but a handful of other people. I don't actually don't have time to consume a lot of news. I don't mean this as a fake attempt at lightheartedness. I consume a lot of sports. I don't consume a lot of podcasts, not even ours. So Derek tells me these are ones you should listen to, not because of any concern about you, but I don't consume a lot of news. And that ignorance should have told me, ask around. There is a limiting principle to not canceling friends. And it's a very simple, common sense one that you don't have to be as intellectual as we are to understand. And that is, you can say you're not going to participate in canceling someone, a friend, personal friend, institutional friend, while also being clear you're not endorsing everything they've said, you're not endorsing softball interviews, you're not endorsing putting people on shows. And I should have made that clear if, in fact, I was going to proceed with the video. And I have no doubt that if we followed the process, particularly if I did a better job of creating more room for senior management to weigh in on this, that if they had gotten convinced that this was actually something we needed to say, that it would have taken a different form. They bear no responsibility in this. It's mine. It's totally mine. We might want to have more conversations about Tucker. I'm totally open to that, but I wanted to address the issue of no cancellation. What do we do from here? Well, we're going to have a fruitful meeting. My faith tells me that when you make mistakes, own up to them, listen to what people have to say, be grateful for the support and the friendship you have in spite of that. And I'll let the board speak for themselves. I've been in the nonprofit world a long time, and I know you let boards speak for themselves. But I can tell you that I've benefited immensely from the informal conversations, not emergency board meetings, informal conversations, not emergency board meetings, because of their wisdom. And the most important thing you need to know from our board, which is unequivocal, it's categorical, is that they support you, they support heritage, they support what we're doing. And as I told them, I made the mess, I want to clean it up. It would be very easy for me, very easy, to take a path which would say, let me step aside, cancel me. I'm willing to do that, by the way. But I realized in prayer and in conversations with a lot of friends and colleagues that, in fact, if I made the mess, my moral obligation is to clean it. And I need your help, if you're willing, and if you're not, no hard feelings, truly, ever. I need your help in cleaning it up. And so I want to listen to you today. This old professor wants to have office hours with you. If you want to come by, hopefully you know this, you come by and tell me anything you want. And there's not going to be retribution. I think Richard Stern has proved that over the last few years, if I may, sir. I not only don't mind it, you've probably discovered I kind of like it. But in all seriousness, I don't mean to be lighthearted during such a grave situation. In all seriousness, I think that our culture, which is a way of saying all of you, and the credibility we have, will get us through this. And the good news is, and this underscores the lack of wisdom and the timing of such a statement, of the video, is we got a good thing going. And so what I'm trying to do while owning up to the mistake is also to get us focused on where we go from here. And guidance from you formally today in this setting, informally in one-on-one meetings we have in the next days and weeks, I think will be really helpful. I'm going to close there and get on the stage and sit down and ask the rest of the executive team to join me there, because there may be questions you have that would be beneficial for them to answer or help me answer. I'm not evading anything that you want to ask. And Tiffany, who's done such a great job with Heritage Action and so helpful during this process and giving me feedback, including constructive criticism as a friend and colleague, has done a remarkable job of just saying, Kevin, my best way that I can help you and Heritage right now is to go run Heritage Action and get prepared for the midterms. And all of that to say a compliment to her, which she's owed. In spite of all of our great work in Virginia and New Jersey, our side took one on the chin. But as Tiffany and I were talking early this morning, we've learned some things there. And she may want to weigh in later on the current matter, not on the midterms. But no, there's still a plan, and we're still going to go execute it. And I really thank you for being here. God bless you. Andy, are you facilitating questions? Or you're facilitating online questions?
I will gladly facilitate online questions. And if people have questions in the room, thank you. Emma's raised her hand. We have some microphones, and other hands have come up, but Emma, I saw yours first.
Dr. Roberts, I just want to thank you for your words today, for your courage, for your leadership. It has never been more apparent to me that you are the right man for this job. You have the courage, you have the godly character, and you have the prudence to lead this organization well. You have my full support and confidence going forward, and I just want to thank you very much for this conversation. The question that I have and would like to explore with you all is related to the number of anonymous leaks that have become normal as a part of our heritage culture. I would welcome the Washington Post, the New York Post, National Review, and maybe even Daily Signal to this conversation, because the reality is that there is a complete expectation among many staff that everything that you say at this meeting, over email, over group chats, in private conversations, can and will appear in the front pages. That level of the betrayal of trust, the lack of collegiality is completely unacceptable, especially when it goes so far as to anonymously smear interns who have no ability to defend themselves. And given the gravity of the accusations made and suggested, actively places them in harm's way. To be called a Nazi is not a small thing. To be smeared as one without the ability to defend yourself, or even any clear proof that that's even true, is incredibly dangerous given the time that we are in. I would like to hear from you all what the plan is going forward to address this so that we can even begin to rebuild an identity of trust among our staff.
Emma, thank you. I'll start and then turn it over to Derek, and Eric and Andy may want to weigh in. And I'll address both parts of your comment and your question. First of all, thank you sincerely for your support. I don't take that for granted. And those of you who have a different opinion than Emma, that's okay too. But I really appreciate it. The second thing on your question, and I'll touch this lightly because the timing of my responding to what is a lack of virtue, professionally and personally, and that is leaking from what is clearly a confidential conversation, should be obvious to anyone at a conservative institution that's trying to revitalize virtue. But I obviously violated not that particular issue, but a lack of wisdom. And so until I can re-earn that trust with all of you on that particular virtue I didn't exhibit, then I'm going to turn it over to Derek to answer the question. But it is a huge concern.
Yeah, and I welcome Eric and Andy to weigh in too. Yesterday, one of my former bosses died, Dick Cheney. I know he's not in vogue. I know he's not popular. He's a good man. One thing that he used to say is, I got this job because I didn't talk about my last job. In other words, he understood the value of giving confidential advice to your boss. And we've got to have that here. We've got to have that culture of openness that Kevin was just talking about. I'll be upset, but maybe not surprised if this meeting leaks. And you just have to know that factors into everything we do here. And so I would ask those who are leaking to do the honorable thing. And if they don't feel like they can be on this team, they need to resign. And I don't say that gleefully in any way whatsoever, because you can disagree all you want with what's happening, of course, and we will welcome that, and we will be stronger for it. We will make better decisions for it. But if you're not on the team, you're betraying your teammates. It's not you're betraying him or me or anybody on this stage. You're betraying your teammates. Some of the things that were most recently leaked were extremely harmful, as you pointed out so eloquently, Emma. And it's very upsetting. And so I ask if you were that leaker to admit to it. If you're not able to do that, to never do it again. And if we're able to move forward together as a team, I think we'll be much, much stronger. Eric, anything else you want to add to that, or Andy?
Everything we do is a highly collaborative process. You can't do the policy work we do and can't create the solutions. You can't work with Capitol Hill and the administration, our friends, our colleagues. You can't do that if there's no trust. It's paramount. It's unethical. It's immoral. It's not being a good teammate. I mean, it has no place at Heritage. If we see someone leaking, we're not going to do a witch hunt, but if we see someone leaking, you're fired.
Yeah, I'll just simply comment. I know Dr. Rector had his hand up, I believe, and then Dr. Richards, but you can come up with the microphone. I'll just make a quick comment that think about this going forward. If you're leaking our playbook. The secret sauce of the Heritage Foundation, to Kevin's point, is our one voice policy and our ability to work these things through internally. That's what our supporters expect of us. It's what the movement expects of us. Let's have those discussions internally. I can remember a time when I was much younger at the Heritage Foundation when Becky Norton Dunlop and Larry Wurtzel, after 9/11, had an almost knockdown, drag-out fight in the loose conference room about Homeland Security and Homeland Defense and military codes of justice and civil liberties. They had that fight inside the House, and then we went out with great recommendations. Were those the right recommendations now? All those things can be asked, but we had that fight and that discussion and that debate in a very, very pointed way internally, and then we went out and told that story and sold some policies to the legislative branch and the executive branch. That's our job. That's what we're expected to do here. And if you go outside, you're leaking the playbook. What's our value? What's the difference between us and any other organization? So don't leak the playbook. Question, Dr. Rector.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Robert Rector. I've worked at the Heritage Foundation for 47 years. I've been active in the conservative movement for a half a century, which is longer than most of you have been alive. And I want to start by going back to the origins of this institution, the origins of conservatism, with William F. Buckley, someone who almost none of you have ever met him. I hope you know who he was, because he founded the conservative movement in the United States. And I want to go back to his basic principle. When he set up the conservative movement in the early 1960s, and he said, you have to put boundaries around this movement. Okay, back then it was the John Birch Society, basically. But there were not one principle, but two. The boundaries, because if you don't have boundaries on who you regard inside the movement will destroy itself, and it will create a PR nightmare for everybody in it. And the boundaries that he set forth, William Buckley, in early 1960s, were twofold. You have to expunge all anti-Semitism, all of it, but that's just part of it, from the conservative movement. The other is you have to expel the lunatics, okay? The lunatics who think that Eisenhower was a communist, okay? And a whole bunch of, and we have them back now, okay? They are both here back just the way they were in 1959. And we have to go back and set the general parameters. You say, oh, we don't cancel. We do cancel. Did we cancel David Duke? Yes. You don't even know who David Duke was, probably most of you. I'd say. You know? Yes. Did we cancel the John Birch Society? Yes. Okay? Because they were harmful. Because if they're in your movement, you look like clowns. Okay? And the issue here is Tucker Carlson. And I think, Mr. President, you don't understand the post-fact Fox Tucker Carlson. If you're not watching the interview with Daryl Cooper or Nick Fuentes, if you don't watch Nick Fuentes online, you don't know what's going on here. Okay? Who's Daryl Cooper? Well, you need to know who Daryl Cooper is.
Well, I talked to Tucker about Daryl Cooper last year.
Okay. Well, a lot like Eisenhower being a communist there. Whole lot. Okay? So with Tucker, you have both of these things. Tucker's show is like stepping into a lunatic asylum. This is Tucker, Daryl Cooper, Tucker, Nick Fuentes, and we'll talk about he's not having Nick Fuentes online. He's promoting him, okay? And Candace Owens, so forth, okay? So if you have someone inside the conservative movement who literally says that, oh my goodness, you know, Hitler really didn't want World War II. He was kind of a peaceful guy. It was Winston Churchill that caused this whole thing. My God. Eisenhower's a communist, okay? If someone is that nutty, and I know you're too young to care about, I'm a boomer, World War II is a big thing to me, but my God, if you could be that wrong about the World War II, you are wrong about everything on planet Earth, okay? And then Nick Fuentes, okay? This guy is a neo-Nazi. He adores Hitler. He says he was a effing cool guy, okay? Do we want him in the conservative movement? Do we want people that are adjacent to him in the conservative movement? But if you look at what Carlson did, he wasn't ventilating Nick Fuentes. He wasn't telling the public about who this neo-Stalinist, vile, racist. He is the most hateful person I think I've ever seen, potentially, allegedly on the right. Did Carlson reveal this? Did he ask him one meaningful question? No. If you were to go after this, you could find 1,000 insanely toxic things that Nick Fuentes has said, all of which Carlson not only didn't reveal, he concealed them. And if you watch that interview, when he actually gets to the one point that's meaningful, and Nick Fuentes says, yeah, I've loved Stalin since I was a teenager. He's my #1 guy. And Carlson says, we'll talk about that later. And then you never talk about it. And so he massages him. That was the most moderate interview, the most moderate presentation of Nick Fuentes I think has ever existed, all orchestrated by Tucker to mainstream him and bring him into the conservative movement. This guy.
Dr. Rector.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The question is, what is the role of someone who is doing this, who's mainstreaming a neo-Nazi Stalinist online, and who believes that Churchill was the cause of World War II? What role does that person have inside the conservative movement, looking back to what Bill Buckley told us at the very beginning of this movement? That's my question.
Robert Rector, I love you. Thank you. I agree with you. And one thing, there'd be a lot of things to say, but so we can get to another question, but I want to address your fair question. I can speak to Heritage's role, which I see very clearly now, one of the lessons learned 6 days in. And that is, we do what we've always done, which is to confront those noxious ideas. And secondly, to be clear, that Fuentes, people like Fuentes, they aren't conservatives. There's no way that can be construed that way, or at least in a way that's persuasive. But we also, and this is not disputing what you've said, but adding to it a tactical desire, we have to understand that in 2025, that evil person, Fuentes, although I still have hope for his soul, has an audience of several million people. And at least some of that audience might be open to be converted. My video didn't do that, although the intention was to open that idea, not to endorse what Fuentes is saying, but quite the opposite, to appeal to them. And that might be one of our medium-term goals that comes from this, is to, if they're totally off base, not worry about them. But if there's a segment of that audience who might be with us and they really are not Nazis and anti-Semites, then maybe we can eventually bring them into the fold. I think we have to think that way, for what it's worth. Thank you.
Aaron, I see your question or your hand up in the back. I see a lot of hands.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. I think the outreach team specifically knows this, but everyone in the building knows that Heritage is an effective powerhouse, but we're only as effective as our coalition and how we work well with our movement partners. And those relationships are really hurting right now. So I would love to know, what is your message to movement partners, and how do you plan to mend those relationships?
Thanks for that question. I'll ask Andy to piggyback on this with some more specificity, but I'll start by saying, taking the same approach that I've taken not only in this meeting, but the last few days, which is to listen to their concerns, not debate them. I don't have anything to debate, but to listen to their concerns, to see what we can do to make amends and build a plan from there. And that's my total focus right now. I can tell you, just not to blow smoke or sunshine, that all of those conversations up to this point have gone well. And it's not because they started with, Kevin, we love you. They all start with, man, you made a mistake. And so just proceeding with that.
I'll simply comment. Dr. Gardner had his hand up front here, so let's bring a microphone up. For the sake of time, I'll keep my comments short, but you're all a part of the conversation that Aaron just touched and that Kevin elaborated on. As we have this coalition or this conversation with coalition partners and others, it goes right back to the part of where we're going to go from here. People need to be heard. They need to have their opportunity to tell us what they're thinking. So we should welcome every opportunity to talk to our friends and colleagues across the movement. And then it's very much about what we do going forward. We do so much. We do so much exceedingly well. We had a mistake. We should speak to that. We should speak to it plainly and clearly. And then we have to talk about the work for the American people going forward. That's the conversation everybody wants to have. And if some people don't want to be a part of a coalition going forward, it's on us to rebuild those relationships and to build those back, and then to have them be a part of the coalition going forward. And insofar as they don't want us in their coalition efforts going forward, it is on us to work with them to get back into their good graces to move forward. I know Kevin Roberts, I know the man, I know many of you, and I know many of you very well. That is what gives me hope and confidence as we have those conversations. They know the work that we want to do, they know the work that we have done and will do going forward. I feel very confident about that. And since I do have the floor, I will say we hear from a lot of people, donors included, upset, and donors who say, I totally understand the purpose of the message, don't like the way it was delivered, but you have to keep pushing forward and building the coalition that's going to defeat the left. And so we understand the permutations of this conversation, not glossing over any of them. Dr. Gardner?
Thanks very much, and thank you for holding this very important discussion. I think one of the great things about Heritage is we're all able to come together and discuss ideas and debate them also. And I speak as someone who has a deep love of Heritage. I've been here for nearly a quarter of a century. I think this is my 24th year. I've loved every day that I've worked here at Heritage. I'm proud to work here. And I also have immense respect for Kevin's leadership. And just wanted to mention a recent example of that leadership. When we went to Helsinki, Kevin addressed an audience of European business leaders, some of the most powerful business leaders in Europe. And Kevin told this audience that we should be standing for Brexit. We should see Brexits all over Europe. Every European Union country needs its own Brexit. And that was a moment of tremendous courage and leadership and principle. And I greatly respect that. And I greatly respect your leadership, Kevin. I just have a few words really about policy and the direction that Heritage has taken with regard to Tucker Carlson. Mm-hmm. And I do think that with Tucker, he's someone who I first met actually many decades ago when he was a co-host of Crossfire and I was a guest on his show. And I do think that Tucker has played a very important role in shaping the conservative movement over many, many years. But I think in recent years, Tucker has moved towards very extreme positions. And as Robert Rector pointed out, some of the guests that he's hosted have been people who really, in my view, are very destructive. They promote anti-Semitism. You see supporters of Hitler, enemies of Winston Churchill, the enemies of Western civilization. And I do think that we have to really speak out against that. Mm-hmm. Because we are the leaders of the conservative movement. The Heritage Foundation is the battleship of the conservative movement. And when we see examples of outrageous anti-Semitism, racism, etc., and attacks upon the very foundations of this great nation, we need to stand up and condemn those those statements and those actions. And unfortunately, Tucker has given a platform to, frankly, some of the enemies of Western civilization. And without a doubt, I think right now, this is a defining moment for the Heritage Foundation. We have got to stand on the side of righteousness. We have to defend the very principles of the founding of Heritage, but also the founding of this great nation of the United States. And I had the privilege of becoming an American citizen over a decade ago. I'm greatly proud of this wonderful nation and for everything it stands for. It's a real honor to be an American citizen. And we've got to fight and defend everything this great nation stands for. And we've got to stand up to the hatred that's out there from some elements who claim to be conservatives, but they're not. And Heritage is such a powerful, strong voice. And I do hope that moving forward, we are going to stand up and condemn those who frankly seek to undermine the conservative movement and who undermine the foundations of this great nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gardner, very well said, and not just because of your accent, even though you're now an American citizen. I appreciate the generous words, but most importantly, the second half of your comment, your exhortation. We have to. That's the lesson. And it's not that we weren't going to do that, but the video got in the way of that, right? Absolutely. Thank you.
Jay Richards, question? And I see there's a lot of hands. I also have questions coming in from online. So,
thanks so much for doing this, Kevin and friends. I have many questions of my own. Kevin knows what they are. We've had private conversations, and I prefer those to stay private. But I was asked by our colleagues in the education center, because they're all remote today, so they're not here. And so they asked me to ask Kevin you this question on their behalf. And so I will just read it verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Roberts, we appreciate the steps you've taken to clarify what we do not understand with Nick Fuentes. However, there is more work to be done to repair the relationships we at Heritage have with key partners in the conservative movement. Since Thursday, members of the education policy team have received numerous messages from key partners expressing their concerns about Heritage relationship with Tucker Carlson. Many have said that they cannot associate with us so long as Heritage as an institution publicly declares that we will always be friends with Tucker, even though he promotes odious and decidedly unconservative ideas and figures. We believe those relationships can be repaired if you publicly clarify that you have a personal friendship with Tucker, but that the Heritage Foundation is committed to principles and policies, not personalities. Would you be willing to do that?
Yes. And thank you, Jay, and our education team for the question. We are, as we were coming into the meeting, just a little bit of process. The answer is yes, unequivocally. Coming into this meeting, the reason we were a few minutes late is we were working on precisely that. And we won't do the wordsmithing and workshopping here, but know that a lot of key people, yourself included, will be part of that in this next step. But know that has to happen. And just to put a really underscored point on that, I made the mistake of conflating too much the personal friendship I have with Tucker. Although I want to be really clear, I don't think that everything, or maybe even most of what he does now, is helpful or good. But conflating that with particularly the word always as the institution. And even the institution can say, Tucker will be a friend, but that's different than saying that you endorse everything the friend does. Some of you are friends of mine personally, and you say, well, I'm grateful to you, Kevin, as a friend. I'm grateful to you as the president of Heritage, but that was a mistake. It doesn't mean you've got to endorse that, right? So that's what we're working on. Andy may want to have other things to say because he's kind of got the pen on this, to the point about making the process better.
The process has to get better, and we're working on that. Rather than say something, I want to hear more from everybody in this room, and we can input that, if I may, just
Sure,
the number of questions. I do want to read a question from online from Eugene Kontorovich. Eugene, an error in the delivery is on me if I get this wrong. Kevin, I have never met you in person, but let me say I hold your integrity in the highest regard. The question is, given the stated justification for the course followed so far is not to push away the disaffected young men, so to be able to reach them and educate them. What is the plan for doing so? And if this controversy has not sabotaged this, where they will now dismiss us as saying they got to you too, when we defend the U.S.-Israel alliance, won't they just say this is just a pound of flesh? So maybe a little bit more on how we want to reach the next generation of young men that do hear a lot of noxious and odious ideas and was a part of the original justification and motivation for.
Sure. Thanks, Eugene. Thanks for what you're doing. On that, one step of the plan is the first step, going back to Niall's point and to some extent Jay's, is to say repeatedly what we've always said, what I've always said, that anti-Semitism is abhorrent, it is evil, it has no room in the conservative movement. Stalinism, communism, as I mentioned at the top, the grotesque things about women and men, you have to say those things first, repeat them. But the second thing is, and this is where I'll have to turn it over to outreach, communications, messaging, political experts in our midst, we have to figure out how to go drive a wedge between some of his audience and him himself. Because as lamentable and tragic and gross and evil as it is, a lot of his audience believes that it's rebellious to say those things, merely rebellious. That is obviously gross. But I'm convinced, looking at some of the demographics of that audience, that we might be able to convince some of them there. That's the project. I've got to leave the details to people who know better how to do that.
And we can certainly talk more about that. A question from Michael Werner, one of our very effective colleagues who is out in the field all the time talking to donors and supporters. And he asked this question in a very Michael Werner way, which is a charm and a talent. Can we expel people from our movement who think affordability is not a problem for younger American families?
Say this, Michael's a friend, and I think he will appreciate the joke. He likes to stir the pot. Love you, Michael Werner, too. I don't think we're going to expel people for saying that. I think what we're trying to do is facilitate a conversation.
Yes, thank you. We'll come back to a question in the room. Hands are up. Amy Swearer's hand is up over here. Amy, will come to you. I will, pardon me very quickly, Amy. Tiffany Justice sent a note. As Kevin said, she's in Florida today. Tiffany just asked that I share. She's back from a few days of travel, 10 days of travel on the road in the Midwest, getting ready for midterm planning. She's proud to be a part of this organization, and she supports Kevin. And as we saw yesterday, the Democrats are incredibly organized, and we must come together for the fight, for the future of America, and Heritage Action is focused on the future. So thank you for that note, Tiffany. Amy?
Dr. Roberts, you've repeatedly emphasized that these all-staff meetings are the place in which we are to use radical candor within Heritage. So please allow me to be radically candid. I hope you don't mind. I also brought notes.
Yeah, no problem, Amy.
Sir, I know that you're a patriot. I know that you care very deeply about this nation. You care about this institution. We've accomplished some remarkable things under you. I also have every reason to believe you are a good and decent man, and I know that you're my brother in Christ. And yet, after all of the events of the last week, I stand here today with no ability to say I have confidence in your leadership for this institution moving forward. And I also know that that sentiment is shared by others in this room who, for reasons that I think are perfectly reasonable, especially given what we've seen this last week, are afraid to say that exact same thing openly and directly. But as you yourself have said, now is the time for courage. And Dr. Roberts, over the last week, you have shown a stunning lack of both courage and judgment. There's nothing ambiguous about what we saw happen. Tucker Carlson invited a Holocaust-denying neo-Nazi onto his show and then spent roughly 2 hours doing little more than flirting with him. And when our friends and allies on the right, staunch conservatives, rightly and reasonably criticized Tucker for throwing softball questions at a Hitler apologist, we had options at that point. We could have, and in my opinion, should have, joined them. We could have led from the front and lovingly rebuked our ally. Loving rebuke is an action that, respectfully, even Helen Keller could see is not the same thing as participating in cancel culture. We also could have just said nothing at all. Instead, We managed to scrape together an initial response that, at best, was equal parts incoherent, unhelpful, and naive. At worst, as others have referenced, it was more akin to a masterclass in cowardice that ran cover for the most unhinged dregs of the far right. The next 4 days, I think, for me, were even more worrying because you appeared to dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge any real semblance of accountability. Nothing about that seemed to indicate you really wanted the buck to stop with you. It seemed at first as though you wanted the buck to stop with your chief of staff, and only after it became clear that Ryan falling on his sword would be insufficient to quell the outrage both inside and outside of this building did we finally see you manage the courage to utter the words, "I made a mistake." And quite frankly, even if you had managed to say that 4 hours after that video, it would have been a weak response. But sir, it took you 4 days to say that. And even then, the mistake was couched largely in terms of, well, I'm sorry you guys just didn't really understand the words that were coming out of my mouth, and maybe I should have spoken better, but also maybe try to listen better this time. With all due respect, Dr. Roberts, we all understood what you said in the video and in the ensuing response. It wasn't that we weren't ready for some additional nuance. It was that little of what you said actually made sense to us. We watched you seem perfectly willing to attack all of our friends and allies on the right, but say nothing about the guy who just said he dislikes nothing more than Christian Zionists, a term which he seems to use to mean basically anyone who supports Israel and includes many people in this room. And then we watched this sort of incoherent defense for days of, well, we can't participate in cancel culture, and anyone who attacks Tucker is participating in cancel culture, but also we're going to attack the people who are participating in that cancel culture, and that's not cancel culture. And sir, maybe I'm just a simple human, but there's not enough grass that I can touch to make that make sense. Those are not the actions of a man who knows what time it is. And frankly, I'm not even sure they're the actions of a man who knows how to tell time. And so while I am very grateful for what I have seen Heritage accomplish and for what you have done within the movement, I don't know how I can stand here with a straight face and tell you that I have confidence in your leadership. And I want to address very quickly the inevitable next question of then, Amy, if you don't have faith in this leadership, shouldn't you just resign? No, respectfully, I shouldn't just resign, and I am not just resigning. I've been here for 8 years, and I walked into this building today more committed than ever to building an America where freedom, opportunity, prosperity, and civil society flourish. And my scholarship, like the scholarship of so many of my colleagues who, like me, are equally dumbfounded and astounded at what we've seen this week, that scholarship powerfully and compellingly furthers our mission. And so by resigning, we would accomplish nothing. We would only manage to hold the wrong person accountable for what, frankly, I can only characterize as an institutional series of horrible, terrible, no good, very bad, self-imposed injuries that we've seen. But I love this institution. And when this meeting is over, I'm going to go back to my office and I'm going to do what I have always done. I'm going to do my job to the best of my ability. I'm going to put on my helmet, I'm going to fix my shoulder pads, and I'm going to go be a cheerful warrior. But I don't, for the life of me, know how we are supposed to have any faith right now in the person leading this team.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate your radical candor. I respect it. I respect you. And most of all, I'm grateful that, given what you said, that you're still committed to Heritage. And I ask you to still be. So thank you.
Rachel, question?
Thank you. My name is Rachel Greisler. I have been at Heritage for 12 years now. And I just want to say that I am deeply loyal to this institution, to my freedom-loving colleagues, and to those who created this flagship institution. As more and more of my friends and family have continued to criticize heritage and even question whether it is worth saving, I have continued to tell them that there are so many good, genuine, smart, and principled people here. But it has become increasingly difficult to continue to defend the Heritage Foundation when we see those people, those smart and principled people, have their voices squashed or have them leave Heritage entirely. One voice policies used to be deliberated and debated, including in forums like this. Instead, it seems that they are increasingly being decided in closed-door meetings among a few elite people without regard to the opinions of hundreds of Heritage staff, and often in utter disregard to the policy experts themselves and to decades of long-standing Heritage positions. We've been told that our principles haven't changed, just some of the policies have changed. But if our policies directly contradict our principles, then either our principles have changed or we have no principles. Instead of promoting and defending policies that will improve the lives of ordinary Americans every day, it feels like we're increasingly being asked to promote and defend certain people without regards to their policies or their morals. For me, this latest video defending Tucker Carlson for platforming somebody who spews murderous hatred and has said some of the most vile and horrendous things, not only about Jews, but also about women and Black people, this was the final straw for me. It's just the last one, but there are many that have come before it. It also gave credence to our protesters who are out there every day and put further at risk the safety of Heritage employees. Kevin, you are winsome and you have always been kind to me, but I do not believe that you are the right person to lead the Heritage Foundation.
Thank you for your comments, Rachel. You know that I respect you.
Question in the back. I apologize. I can't see.
I condemn Nick Fuentes' hateful rhetoric. That being said, I would like to point out that some of the most vocal people against Tucker Carlson have been calling him an anti-Semite since he started to hold more anti-interventionalist views. A handful of young colleagues and I had no issue with the points you made in the original video. I don't think that was the right moment to have such an important conversation regarding US-Israel relationships, because now we fear that the concerns we have won't be addressed. Gen Z has an increased unfavorable view of Israel, and it's not because millions of Americans are anti-Semitic. It's because we are Catholic and Orthodox and believe that Christian Zionism is a modern heresy. We believe it does go against church doctrine and the teachings of the early church fathers to use Christianity as a defense for a secular nation. In Christ, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, and there is no salvation outside of Christ. As a young person, many of us are generally tired of foreign entanglements while our problems in this country worsen. My question is there room for people that hold our perspectives on the path forward to address the concerns regarding US-Israel relationships? You said that people who spoke out against you will not be punished, but what about the people who agree with the substance of what you said?
Thank you. Yes, we're inside this institution. We represent America, at least the political right in America, which means that we're pluralistic, we're non-sectarian, whatever your particular faith tradition is respected. And on the matter that you raised regarding Christian Zionism as a theological matter, that's one where, as an institution, we have to be agnostic, right? Because it's a matter of theology, it's a matter of religion. I'll ask Derek to weigh in on this. But in the same way that I would fully respect the previous two comments, because I respect the colleagues who made them and understand their heart and their spirit, I respect yours and people who agree with you, which is not a way of trying to have it both ways, but of saying that's what heritage is. And the second thing, not making excuses for anything that I've done, that's the difficulty in the conservative movement right now, is trying to figure out how we can all respect each other's differences of opinions, particularly on the question of that you raised, and work together and put it together in a cohesive or more cohesive organization, a more cohesive movement. So not only that we can win elections, but that the reason we want to win elections is to implement good policy. And so in the same way that I respect people inside this institution who have a different opinion than you do, I, of course, equally respect you. So I'm grateful that you made the comment.
And maybe I just add one quick thing, which is, we had Jonathan Haidt here for all of this, and he's written a lot of really good stuff, actually, even as a center-left guy. And we had him here, and he's talked about the impact of social media on anxiety for children and all that. He also had an earlier book called The Righteous Mind, and we have to recognize that there is extreme pressure on all of us, especially through social media, to equate ideas with people. And if I disagree with the idea, I disagree with the person. If I want to cancel the idea, I cancel the person. We've got to all work, think, and discern together how we operate in that new world. And we do need to be careful that we recognize there's a real world and then there's the online world. So that, I think, adds a lot of fuel to a lot of fires. And the issue you raise about Israel, for our position is, Israel has been a great ally of the United States, and when it's in the American interest to support the nation of Israel, we will do so. And they've proven to be an excellent ally with information sharing and all of that. And we will also stand firmly against any anti-Semitism, certainly against the foolish, evil calls of Hamas and other terrorists in Israel and in that region to wipe Israel off the map. That, is akin to genocide. We're against all that. So we have a lot of things that we've stood for a long, long time without getting into the question of the theological question, where there are good faith differences, even among people here on this stage, I'll tell you. And we're going to avoid that and not wade into those waters because that's not our role. That's not what we do.
Thanks, Derek.
Yes, sir.
So I personally don't understand what support for Israel has to do with any of this. That's not what went on here. What happened is that Tucker, who I've been friends with for a long time, platformed is the word, a Nazi, Stalinist. I was going to say misogynist, but that's too light a word for it. Racist. And what I've had a problem with, and I agree, I think people should be judged not just on one statement, but on the totality of what they've done. And I think you've done a lot of great things. I've read your book. It's a call to action. That's important. I've listened to many things you said here. But what I don't understand is how a statement like this could bubble up from here, even if one person wrote it, you read it with passion. I've been struggling with it because I love it here. I've only been here 9 months, 8 months. I love it. And I don't understand how a statement like this can bubble up, because the totality of it is not to go after this wannabe Hitler who now has millions of followers and many more because of Tucker, and more also because of the continuing controversy here that has kept this story alive. I'm a journalist, for 5-6 days. And so I guess, when I listened to Ben Shapiro yesterday and I heard that absolute moral clarity that he had, and knowing you as a moral person with Christian, I'm Jewish, I happen to be Jewish, but you don't have to be Jewish to have these feelings. But with, I respect Christianity and the ideas that have flown from it, that have come from it, which are basically the foundation of this country. And I don't understand how you come up with something which basically is attacking, not just defending Tucker not just defending Tucker, but attacking those who are after him for platforming this sort of very dangerous, not just evil, but dangerous man. And I wonder how statements like you mentioned, the other statement about the venomous coalition, there was another one here. Conservatives should feel no obligation to reflexively support any foreign government. I agree with that. As a Jew, I think too many people, put Israel, and Jews also will put Israel ahead of the United States. Now, you're not an anti-Semite if you do that, although plenty of people who do that are anti-Semites, frankly. But you're not necessarily an anti-Semite. But then you said no matter how loud the pressure becomes from the globalist class or from their mouthpieces in Washington. Did you understand when you said that that's a dog whistle for international Jewry and AIPAC? That's my concern, is that's how that sounds to me when I heard that. And so I guess what I'm saying is I want to just present to you that that's where my struggle is. Yes, people make mistakes. Yes, people apologize for mistakes, but I don't understand how this statement that you made with passion even comes out of here. And I want to, because I have really enjoyed your leadership and I really enjoy being here. And, but sometimes, it's not just a mistake. It's, does this represent, I could never make a statement like this, and I know a lot of people couldn't, and I don't know why you could, and that's what I would love for you to explain to me.
Thanks immensely for your very fair question, for your own magnanimity, because I misread the situation. And the advice that I got, I took the advice, I didn't stop, I own that, was bad. And I should have been better in that moment to do that. I want to reassure you that phrase like globalist class, I'm thinking you said you read my book. When I take on globalism, I have no one of any faith in mind. I understand, especially now over the last 6 days, because of conversations with particularly Jewish friends, but not exclusively Jewish friends, that's one of the mistakes. And I'm sorry for that.
Hans, I see your hand up. This is not to shut Hans down at all. It is 11:08. We started 8 minutes late. Kevin, you said you had more time. I'm just doing a time check so everybody's aware.
Yep.
Hans, go ahead.
I have to say I agree with a lot of the sentiments that have been expressed here. I've been here a long time, and I work at Heritage because, like Amy, I love this institution. If I'd become a partner at a big law firm, I'd be making 10 times as much as I make here. What I have not heard is, look, the damage done to the reputation of Heritage is the worst I have ever seen. And it's not just in the public relations arena. All the conservatives that I know at organizations, institutions, allwhere are just appalled at what's happened. And what I have not heard is a detailed plan to repair that damage. And I mean, not just in the public relations arena, but also with all of our colleagues who are canceling and saying they're not going to come to our events. They're not going to participate in our task forces. And let me tell you, this plan cannot be a secret that only the 8th floor knows about, because unless all of us know what's in that plan, we can't participate in repairing the enormous damage that's been done. And I have to tell you, if the Heritage Foundation and you do not dump Tucker Carlson publicly, we are not going to repair that damage. And I just want to tell you one other thing, because I think this is a huge mistake that you mentioned before about being personal friends with him at Heritage. Listen, years ago when I first got here, I was told I couldn't publish a particular op-ed. So I said, well, can't I publish it on my own without the Heritage byline under it? And a very wise editor who's now retired said to me, Hans, everybody knows who you are. If you publish an op-ed, even if it doesn't have the Heritage byline under it, they're going to say that's the Heritage position. You cannot have a difference between what you say publicly, well, this is my personal thing, and this is heritage, because nobody is going to see the difference. If you're out there speaking, if you're saying this person's a personal friend of mine, everybody out there is going to say, oh, that's a friend of Heritage. Heritage supports them. It's much more so than me because you're the president of Heritage. And if you think you can make that distinguishing publicly, that's a huge mistake and is going to cause us even more problems.
Thanks, Hans. We didn't come into the meeting wanting to take the time to present the detailed plan, and by that, not just the communications plan, because we wanted to take your comments and questions. I'll lean on Andy briefly to give you a highlight of that. The absence of that in this meeting should not suggest it doesn't exist, but I will tell you that, to reiterate, the same thing that we're doing here, listening to your concerns, going one by one with many of you over the next days, weeks, months, if that's what it takes, is our attitude, our approach to all of our coalition partners who have legitimate concerns.
Yes, 100%. And I'm happy to unpack pieces of the plan. We're putting that together in real time. We've had conversations with, and I should say there have been conversations that Kevin alluded to earlier with board members and other people. We've had calls with very important donors, and every donor is important, but we've had calls with coalition partners. More of those are today. We are repairing the relationships where the reputation hits are there. There is very good news to report on that front, and I don't say that to gloss over the very real concerns that have been expressed here. People want to have this conversation. They are reassured in Kevin's leadership after those conversations. He said to them much of the same things, although I would say you've been even more frank with the audience of colleagues here, and it goes a long way. We need everybody, to your point, Hans, to be a part of that conversation. We're doing that in real time. Part of, very short pivot, and then Daniel Fleisch had his hand up. I want to get to him. Part of the Heritage 2.0 conversation that we've been having is to operate a little bit differently and to integrate as much as we can, because when we get signals from across the movement, whether on a policy issue or whether on a rhetoric point or on personalities, and knowing whether we should, could, or want to chime in, the way we best serve the president of the enterprise is if all of those signals are meeting each other and we're able to put a plan together to move as quickly as possible. That is not what happened here. Some of us, myself included, deeply apologetic for the way that those signals reached Kevin's office, and so I apologize to all of you for that. But we were getting a lot of signals, but the way that we move forward together is that everybody here feels like they can be heard, their point of view on a policy position can be heard, their point of view on political and rhetoric and personality signals can all be inculcated and integrated. That's what we need to do going forward. Last point, and I apologize, but I do want to make this point. I'm wearing a tie that I got at the Heritage Foundation in 1998 when I joined as a public relations associate. One of my jobs at the time was to print 435 copies of whatever Dr. Rector had just published. So I loved it when he published something shorter than something longer, because then I would walk across the street and deliver it to every office in Congress. That's the way ideas traveled then. They travel very differently now, and our organization has to get as far as possible in front of how ideas travel now. And so that's on all of us to be a part of fixing. And I take it very personal that we need to be able to do that as quick as possible. But the way that we move to influence is fundamentally important. And I love this institution. I've loved it since 1998. I love it more today, and I love it under your leadership. And I want all of us to work together to get there. I'm not trying to do a pep talk, but part of what we have to do is get our playbook right so that we can drive influence. That's what people give us $25 a month for, and that's why some people give us a lot more than that, is to influence these ideas. So when we mess up, we apologize, and then we figure it out and we move forward. And everybody has to be a part of that. And to Eric's point at the early onset of this meeting, we want everybody to be a part of that. And by the way, you can disagree with me on anything and everything, as most of you do. I should say many of you do, not most of you. But that's part of the genius of the Heritage Foundation. We can deliver on it. We have to deliver on it. And Kevin's message to us is that we must, because I have failed and the rest of us on the stage have failed if something reaches Kevin that doesn't reflect loosely what I just articulated. We can't have that happen again. And so it's on us to fix that and serve the president as we serve all of you and as we serve all of our members. So question,
One
Daniel.
quick thing, Andy, too, is just to say thank you for that. A lot of us have a lot of ideas of how to reach out and start doing that work. There's so much work to do now that even if it's unorganized, it's just we're doing it all the time. Speaking for myself, especially doing a lot, and we're going to need your help to do that right. So we had asked the senior management to let us know what are the kind of the top 5 audiences, the top 5 conversations that Kevin needs to have, or ELT members need to have, or that if our members of our board need to have. So please work through your vice presidents to give them those ideas so that we can kind of rack and stack them and work on the most valuable conversations first. Thank you.
Daniel, yes.
Thank you. I had some prepared remarks, but between Amy's comments, Rachel's, Jay's, some others, and the way this conversation's gone, I kind of actually want to address my colleagues. For those of you who don't know, I work in the Allison Center, focus on the U.S.'s relationship and combating anti-Semitism, Project Esther. It's been a very tough week, to say the least. I'll share that a couple of weeks ago, I met with a Orthodox Jewish student group here, and I said there's no better place inside the Beltway to be Jewish. And I think that's still true. Not that I think, that is still true, excuse me. But it's been a very tough week for obvious reasons, and there's an email chain of the members of the task force to combat anti-Semitism, of which Heritage is a member, but candidly we provide the most resources, I being one of them. So we are a leading member, and obviously we're Heritage. And it's invariably been what is going on. Has Heritage lost its way? What is Kevin doing? Where's the leadership? What's happening? The only kind of saving grace, to borrow a phrase, is that I've built relationships with these people, these organizations. They know it's not you, Daniel, it's not you, your colleagues at Heritage, other members of the task force. But it's very disconcerting. And because we're talking about anti-Semitism and Israel, I want to say from the outset, first of all, I said this to the YLP 2 weeks ago in a lecture. This is not about the Jews. This has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with all of you. By that I mean all of us. That anti-Semitism is many things throughout history, but it is always and invariably a bigotry of grievance. And Ruth Wise, who's a retired professor of Yiddish history from Harvard, said that defines anti-Semitism in some ways as the organization of politics against the Jews. So if someone is trafficking in anti-Semitism, overtly or covertly, they have another objective in mind. And through Project Esther, we're doing this, we see this on the left. Mamdani won last night, trafficked in anti-Semitism. His objective, not to change US policy towards Israel. Globalized Intifada is not about that. It's to affect the United States itself. And so it's a bigotry of grievance that people have. And Tucker, Fuentes, Steve Bannon, Candace Owens, all of their fellow travelers on this side, supposedly, that's all what it's about. It's not about us. It's about you. It's about all of us. And when Tucker says, for example, I want you all to know, when Tucker says that those Americans who serve in the IDF should be stripped of their citizenship, right here, that's me. That's also one of our colleagues in Israel right now fighting in Gaza. And so they're using the vehicle, the opportunity of October 7th, of questions about the U.S.'s relationship, about AIPAC being some sort of foreign agent or influencer, all of that, not to go after us, but to go after, on our side of the aisle, the conservative movement. And now it starts with us, the Saturday people, but now it's going to you, the Sunday people. They're going to Christian Zionists. And just for everyone's clarification, there are many different definitions to an extent, but the simplest way to understand Zionism is supporting the Jewish right to self-determination in their ancient homeland. It has nothing to do with the current political boundaries of the state of Israel, the government or policies of Israel, but simply if you support the Jewish right to self-determine in our ancient land. And I submit to you, if you are not a Zionist, please come talk to me. If you have questions about the U.S.-Israel relationship, please come talk to me, or Rob Greenway, or Victoria Coates. We are experts in our fields. If you have questions, come talk to us. My door is open. And if I'm not in the office, message me, please. This is a moment. So the grievance against us right now, us holistically, is trying to divide the conservative movement. That's what they're doing, successfully. And Ben Shapiro's his show the other day, masterclass in demonstrating that. And mind you, it was on Twitter yesterday that Tucker's interview with Fuentes got the same number of views as Ben's did, but was on the air for like a week longer. The support is not with those kooks, as the president called them. So, but at the end of the day, it has been 6 days, almost a week, where we as an organization have been unable to utter the words. To some extent, if you want to cut through it, Tucker's anti-Semite, and we as Heritage do not want to associate with him. And we still do not have a statement about that. And I'm still getting emails and calls saying, where are you guys? I speak to members of the task force all the time. I don't have direction. I know where I stand. I know where I think all my colleagues stand, but I do not know where the institution stands. And we are bleeding trust, reputation, perhaps donors, who knows what else, support. And someone asked me earlier this week, and I'll end on this, is if Tucker were to, how could Tucker rebuild trust in my mind? I'm like, can't be done overnight. Can't be done with words. It's going to take time. I don't think he'll ever get there. But the point is, you rebuild trust. So we have a plan to rebuild trust. Does not appear to me we do. We are 6 days into this, and there's been no leadership on it.
Thanks, Daniel. And I'm particularly grateful for your facilitating with Victoria the helpful conversation that I was able to have with some of the co-chairs of the Anti-Semitism Task Force. And to your point about future statements, we are working on that, as I said, coming in. So your point's well taken.
Thank you. There are still hands up, so we'll keep going. Mike Gonzalez, hand, and then Evan, I see your hand. I see hands in the back here, please.
Thanks,
Solano,
Andy.
see you.
And thanks, Daniel. I don't have prepared remarks. I've been here for almost 17 years. I've worked with many leaders of Heritage, all 4 presidents. Kevin has been a great leader. We're all doing great work. He made a mistake. I hated the video, but I think we all make mistakes, first of all. Some people have asked you to resign in this meeting. And I know you're a thoughtful person. You're going to go back to your office and you're going to think about this. I'm asking you not to resign. Because it would be disastrous to those of us who want to fight Mandamni. But that's just one man's opinion. And we have to abandon. As a building, Tucker Carlson, I didn't make a forever promise. I made a forever promise to my wife. I didn't make a forever promise to Tucker Carlson. What the heck is that? But I want to say one thing.
Don't accuse me of things.
As a former journalist, whoever is leaking, you're a betrayer. Well, let me tell you as a former journalist, that journalists you're going to be leaking to will know you're a low form of humanity. People here took risks. Amy, very courageously. Rachel, very courageously. Took risks. If you speak to a journalist about this, they say they're going to fire you, but you're probably not going to be found out. But you will know in your heart you're a Judas. And the journalist will know who you are. Thank you.
Delano, but 1 second. Evan.
Thank you, Mike. That's a hard act to follow. Thought you did a really good job, and I just want to say I'm grateful for all of our colleagues who are speaking up today, and especially for our colleagues on the National Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism. I'm especially grateful for their work. I also have a question about it, given some of the leaks that occurred yesterday. Right now, the National Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism is demanding that Heritage host Shabbat dinners with Heritage interns and junior staff. The faith of many Christians here at Heritage, myself included, would prevent us from attending these dinners in good conscience. As you know, for many Christians, Friday is a special day of prayer and abstinence to commemorate the death of Christ. I assume that no staff will be required to attend the Shabbat dinners, but my concern is that these dinners will serve as a sort of informal litmus test, and I'm worried that they will hurt many Christians who are not anti-Semitic but don't feel comfortable attending a Shabbat dinner. I would like to know how you guys would respond to that concern and how we can be sure that the dinners won't be used that way when the people requesting them or someone has already been leaking them to the media?
Thanks, Evan. The recommendations, and that was the word, there was no demand was made. That is a gross mischaracterization of what was issued by the co-chairs of the Anti-Semitism Task Force yesterday, of which I am one. And I take some offense to that characterization. This was a recommendation, one of 6 recommendations that the co-chairs came to in consultation with the task force to try to provide Dr. Roberts with a path forward. As I said, they were recommendations. They came out of the conversation, which we were grateful to have with you on this topic. And one of the offers was if any Heritage staff would like to participate in this kind of a dinner as an educational exercise, not as a betrayal of their faith, that was an open offer from the task force. It was made in generosity of spirit and in the hopes of increased dialogue on this issue. And Evan, I'm deeply sorry that you could not see that as a generous offer, but rather a personal attack on you. It was not.
I'll answer the question, though. We're not going to require anyone in this institution to do anything that violates their faith. And I'll make a second observation. I wouldn't usually include the contents of my private email responses to anyone. I love that task force, particularly our 2 colleagues who are on it. But the fact that that private, what I thought was a private email to me, was on Twitter with a journalist is unacceptable and it complicates my ability to respond for the very reason that Evan mentioned. Now, Victoria, you know I don't want you to be offended. I don't want anyone to be offended by that. Let's be clear about 2 things. Number 1, no one's religion is going to be violated by anything Heritage has asked you to do. Number 2, I accept the spirit in which those recommendations have been made because I'm very grateful for the task force's work, for the wonderful conversation that we had Monday night. It helped me formulate the words that I had shared at Hillsdale. I told that to Victoria and to Daniel. But it's hard for me and for this institution to consider recommendations when we can't do that privately. Obviously, I give those folks grace because they're giving me grace, but I just want to let you know as we move forward on a detailed plan, for example, Hans, it's got to be under the terms that we get to have the conversations privately.
Thank you. Delano?
I have a prepared question because I want to make sure I get the words right. But first, I want to say a few quick things. When I saw the video and I saw the reaction to it, I think part of what I thought is that it didn't feel like your response was a Heritage first response. It felt like it was a response driven mainly by loyalty to a friend. And God knows I appreciate loyalty to friends. So I don't knock you for that, but it felt like there was a tension between that personal commitment and the institutional commitment. So I hope moving forward, in the same way we talk about sort of our national leaders having their first obligation be to the citizens who elect them, that the first obligation would be to the institution. And I have no doubt that that's...
Yeah. And I don't use that verb lightly. Yeah. I promise you that.
Yeah. Second is I want to commend you and your leadership. Human nature is typically resistant to criticism. And I say this not to be cheeky and not to be too lighthearted, but as a husband, I understand this very deeply. So to sit and have people openly criticize you in front of colleagues is not an easy thing to do, especially in this town where people tend to want to blame other people for their failure. So I respect that. I respect your leadership. I have complete confidence in you moving forward as a leader of Heritage. So here's my question. It's apparent to me that we have a problem with ethnic and religious hostility, particularly on the terminally online right. I want to frame it properly.
Well said.
And this is driven in large part by questions of who qualifies as a real American, which goes back to some of the questions we have internally about citizenship and some of those policy issues that we want to get to. This is not just about Jewish and Black people. It extends to people of Indian descent and even to some Muslims as well. I think this is in part a reaction to decades of the left stretching definitions and weaponizing identity to shield itself or different groups from any criticism of ideas and conduct. As I said, it's not just a matter of race and identity. We get this when we stand up for the reality of biological sex and are accused of being transphobes. So that's just one sort of flavor of it. But that stick does not work in the way it did in past decades. And when I say stick, I mean people saying, accusing you of transphobia, homophobia, racism, anti-Semitism. So my question is, what does the future of the conservative movement look like when accusations of racism and anti-Semitism are met with thank you rather than I'm sorry?
Thank you for all of that. It starts with moral clarity, which is what we always provide. And although that was my intention last week, I didn't provide enough of that and sowed division. And so we need to keep doing as an institution what we're doing. And I need to be obviously better about that and more aware of that. And the way that I'm doing that is taking all of your feedback, whatever it is. And I'm very grateful for it, from really generous comments of support to equally generous comments that are the opposite. I respect that. That's the way forward, is moral clarity.
Standing in the back there, apologize.
Hi, everybody. So for those who don't know me, my name is working here in August, so I'm a bit of a newbie. And although my accent might not immediately betray this, I'll let you in on a little bit of a secret. I'm also from Canada. So I literally just moved here from Toronto. And just a quick survey, does anybody in this room actually know what the equivalent of the Heritage Foundation is in Canada? It's a trick question, of course, because it literally doesn't exist. Okay, so I just want to take this opportunity to encourage you all, but also warn you that the country that I grew up in is literally gone. Right? The home I grew up in, the country I knew as a kid, it's gone. And I don't know if it's ever going to come back. It has literally been completely overtaken by progressivism. And the reason why I bring this up is because I want to remind us all of the importance of this institution. It's really easy to take the workplace that we work in for granted. It's really easy. But a few weeks ago, I had a few Canadian friends come to this workplace and they looked around completely wide-eyed around this organization to see conservatives working a home for conservatives. This is something that they've literally never seen before, ever. And it reminded me of the stories my parents told me growing up of their first time seeing an American grocery store after moving here from communist Romania. So, in short, I simply want to urge you all to remember those words of Reagan that we repeat so often. Freedom is never more than one generation away from being lost. I say this as an encouragement and to remind you all that faith in this institution, in Heritage's mission, it goes beyond this building. It's about our children's future. And I do not want to see America become the next Canada. And I'm so, so happy and encouraged to see us all embrace dialogue on issues that we might disagree with. But for those of you, especially those who are leaking things to the press, please do not turn your back on this institution and do not take the halls of this great institution for granted, because halls like this do not exist around the world. They do not exist in my home country, and I don't know if they will ever be back there again. So thank you, Dr. Roberts, for your honesty, for your accountability, for your leadership. I have faith in you, and I thank you all for welcoming a Canadian like me over here, the land of the free. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you. Daniel Cochran, I see your hand up. That's radical candor, right? One of our colleagues, Dusty Heiss-Levine, great guy, one of our field generals out there who's always talking to donors and everything. He's asking me a question, and I'm trying to navigate in real time. But Liana just was talking about the dialogue that we have internally. Not to put you on the spot, Kevin, but we're talking about a national anti-Semitism task force doing wonderful work. We're talking about an terminally online right that's very different, and we need to treat them and understand them very differently and all this. Could we maybe have a conversation, continue this in this way, inside the Heritage Foundation about faith and how it influences our politics and how it influences who we are as individuals and belief and all of that, and then we can work with outside organizations that sort of understand. I'm not saying we have one voice policy on faith. That's exactly what we can't. And I believe you said that, so I'm poorly articulating it back, but it really seems like we need more of this conversation internally as an organization so we can have a more effective external conversation, which is, I think, what everybody also wants. Is that?
Yeah, I just want to say, yes, we should do that. If there's going to be fruit from this, and we just have to believe there will be, not making excuses, then it's going to be that Heritage, because for 52 years it has been the home for those conversations to happen, is going to have conversation about something so sensitive, like someone's personal faith, not about that or about some institutional requirement on that, obviously, to state the obvious again, but about how that translates into our politics. And I can say that emphatically because of who you are, but also because of one of the most beneficial conversations I've had in the last 6 days, and it was with the Anti-Semitism Task Force. And we spoke candidly, openly, fraternally. I will forever, for the rest of my life, be grateful for the grace extended to me by those colleagues, internally and externally. I think if we mimic that, that's not only going to help us through this internally, but it also is going to be a service to the conservative movement, to the country, and to each of our respective faiths. It's something that binds us together. And I'm not trying to be, certainly not trying to be sappy. I do still have unbridled optimism about Heritage, about America, about each of you, whatever decisions you make, whatever decisions I make. And I think that that's got to be the fruit that we look forward to.
All right, thank you. Daniel, question, and then Preston, did I see your hand up, or did you? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. You are one of the reasons I am here at the Heritage Foundation. When I first met you back in, I think it was 2022, and I say this honestly, you were the first major conservative leader that I had interacted with that I thought got it. And you use the term a lot, knowing what time it is. That was truly my reaction to our conversation there. And I have the utmost respect for you. I support you unequivocally, and your reaction to this incident has given me even more respect. One concern I had in the aftermath of some of the video and statement is, my colleague Emma Waters mentioned some of the leaks that have occurred, and this has been a repeating pattern. But another issue I have is seeing, candidly, some of my colleagues sharing their grievances on Twitter. And I think you've been very open that you want to hear criticism. You have invited that for the entire time I've been here, which is nearly 2 years. And I'm concerned, as a younger colleague, how can we continue to lead the movement and have and ensure that we come to the best positions if we can't trust our colleagues internally? And if every major disagreement, when someone makes a statement that we disagree with honestly, and I appreciate and I respect some of my colleagues here who have leveled criticisms, but when we can't have that conversation internally without trusting that it's not going to be leaked to the press, when it's not going to be aired on Twitter, how can we continue to lead the movement? And so I guess my radical, candid question to you is, what specific actions will your leadership team consider in future to ensure that, to be honest, the chain of command is followed and that grievances are considered and criticism is considered, but it's considered internally consistent with our policies and not airing all of Heritage's dirty laundry in the public eye, especially around issues of this import?
Daniel, very eloquent, very thoughtful, like everyone else has been, regardless of their comment and question. I'm going to turn it to Derek, who I think is best equipped to answer your question with some specificity.
Yeah, been a lot of terms thrown around here, I think not in bad faith, but it really is cowardly to leak to the media. And I use that word very carefully. When you have other outlets, and you have many, you have your direct boss, you have, sure, their boss, all the way up the chain of command, certainly me, certainly Kevin. He's put aside most of his day the next 2 days to meet with anybody who wants to meet with him one-on-one. I think he's demonstrated today the exact opposite of cowardice in hearing people's concerns directly and addressing them directly as best as he can. He's got responsibilities to his conscience. He's got responsibilities to his board. He's got responsibilities to all of you. He's got responsibilities to this institution. I've seen him agonize over what to do, not in a weak way, in a way that he looks to his faith to answer that. I think each and every one of us owe him that respect to talk to him directly. And to look, some people don't want him as president of the Heritage Foundation. There's a headline for you, okay? Been that since the first day he was announced. It's going to be that headline tomorrow for some people. I get it. And if that's you, you're welcome to your opinion, and that's fine. But don't throw your colleagues under the bus. Use the proper channels. There's nobody here that wants to take any negative action on you for sharing your opinion. So I don't want to have a police state here. Eric, you said that very well. Nobody wants a police state here. We want to be self-governing people. So govern yourselves. Do the honorable thing. Use the channels that you have. And if you're not satisfied with the answer, then the only option that I would personally do is I would resign. I would not throw my colleagues under the bus. It pains me to say that in a way because I don't want any one of you to resign. Any more than some of our colleagues that have left to go to the administration and elsewhere. I love this team, and I know a lot of you have those same fraternal feelings, so please do the honorable thing. But of course, if we discover there is a leaker, they should be fired because it is a betrayal. Plain and simple.
Let me just add also, the second part of your question is on the process on how to prevent this moving forward and when there are grievances or disagreements in the building. And so a couple things that we've instituted recently and then moving forward. One, we know there's too many workarounds. There's too many workarounds from a single person to go get the decision they want. They don't want to work through the legislative process. They don't want to have, take it to a group and actually talk about it. It's like, I want this action. I'm going to go right to this person that I need to make this action, and we'll get it out the door. It's fast, but it's not prudent. So we've made changes on our senior management team. We increased the length of our meetings, the frequency of our meetings. We're asked for the most consequential decisions to be brought through that process so everybody at the seat of the table can represent their team, represent the interests, raise red flags, talk about unintended consequences, and stop these workarounds where someone can get right to Kevin through a back door and get a decision they want. But the rest of the building's like, how did that happen? So we're working through the senior management team to do that on big consequential decisions. The chief of staff role is critical. We made the decision over the weekend to make this change and said, Derek needs to go in there. Derek can represent the whole building and won't allow a decision unless all the voices are heard. Even this morning, there was a decision, and Derek said, so-and-so disagrees with that. They need to be heard. We know that going forward, and Kevin said that to us, that the senior management team will be part of the process on the next chief of staff. The board will have a say if they elect to weigh on that. But that position is so critical because there's 350 people in this building that want something right now. I need a decision. I need this. I need Kevin to do this. I need him to say this, do that. And Kevin needs to trust the process. But we need the right person in that role to say, slow down. Does everybody, to Kevin's point earlier, did everybody sign off on this? Did everybody have eyeballs on this? And so that's a really, really important position. It's why we have Derek in this role. And we said he needs to be here in this acting role, even though he has 1,000 other things on his plate. It's so consequential for all of you and what we do to have someone like Derek in this role. And we really appreciate Derek stepping in there. It's heavy right now, but we need someone like Derek there now and in the future. Kevin needs that. We all need that. And so we recognize that as a process change moving forward.
Thank you all very much for your time. And I see there's still at least 5 hands up, but we do have to have some conclusion to the course of the meeting today because there are other meetings that are taking place. Preston, is there something that you would like to say, sir? Take a microphone behind you.
I do hope that everyone gets a chance to say what they want to say at some point, if not today.
Of course.
But I do want to second and echo some of the criticisms and the concerns about the leadership and the discernment over the past week. It was very concerning. Obviously, most of you know that I was pretty outspoken about that. But what I want to do today is not focus on that. I do want to focus on what we have in common, Kevin. And I think we have a lot in common. I think
That's my sense.
I think we both love the Heritage Foundation. We think it's an invaluable institution that cannot be lost. And I know we both have lost a lot of sleep over the last few days about what happened and questioning whether we had what our role in that was and what it would mean for the institution and for our nation. And let me just first off, let me just say how grateful I am to all my colleagues. You're wonderful. But this institution matters. And another thing we have in common is whatever mistakes we've made, whatever mistakes I've made and you've made and others have made, yes, we can talk about accountability and those things, and that we should. But ultimately, I believe that Christ's blood is enough to cover all of our sins. We all make mistakes, and I'm not forgiving this. I'm not saying where this should go. That's not my job. But I just want to say, this institution really matters, and it does what I think we both care about, and I think I think I probably speak for everyone in this room, whether they agreed with what I did and whether they agreed with the video or not. Wherever the dust settles, I think it matters so much that this institution is restored fully, and that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Preston, and thanks for your magnanimity.
Kevin, any closing comments before we wrap this one conversation, but obviously keep the discussion going?
Thank you. Thanks for everything that was said, truly. You might expect me to say that, but I mean it. Every single word, every single comment, every single question. Number two, we will continue the conversation. It's going to take us more than this conversation, more than the next few steps to have the restoration that Preston so eloquently spoke about. But know of my commitment to that, zealous commitment to that, which doesn't mean that this is the only conversation we're having about accountability. Thank you. God bless you. Keep your chin up. We will, one way or the other, see ourselves through this. And we will look back, I hope, on this meeting, however it is that the dust settles, and we will say, that's the moment when we realized, yes, a mistake, making no excuses for it, but here's an opportunity to grow from that, not only personally, but also institutionally. And I can tell you with no salesmanship, zero, I'm just being candid. You want radical candor back from me? That is what our supporters of every kind, even some of them who are miffed, others who aren't miffed at all, that is what they know only one institution on the planet can do. And because I know that, and knew it when I woke up this morning, early, praying, as all of you have been doing, and I know 2 hours into this meeting, let's go win. Let's go take back America. Let's do it the right way. God bless you.